And good morning. Yes, here we are, back on the air, 7:07 a.m. Dave King, Matt Martin at your service, and I've been looking forward to this for some time. We have, as promised, in the house, Lubbock Police Chief Greg Stevens and Lubbock County Sheriff Kelly Rowe. Good morning, guys.
Hey, pleasure to be here.
Well, we've got so much to talk about and so little time. Everything going well in your worlds?
You know, it really is. It is such a pleasure to watch these guys get out and get to do what they love doing every day, and that's protecting this community.
Yeah, I always say how much I miss being a police officer, and I say that kind of facetiously, but I do. I don't get to do that job anymore. But what I take,
well, one of your guys let you ride with him.
Sure, I go out and every now and then I'll try to get out, do a quick ride along. But what I really enjoy most is getting to create the environment and put the things in place, all the logistics for our folks to go out and do that job. To do police work and have the things they need to do it, and to have a good environment to do that in.
Yeah.
It's fun to watch.
You know, one of the things I've been anxious to ask you guys is about jurisdiction. Maybe I've watched too many police shows, always bumping heads with jurisdiction. And
it's always the FBI. They're always the problem.
Well, it's
shout out.
It's one of those things that I think that most citizens, they don't understand, and I don't really understand all of that. Just for example, I was wondering. Let's say there was a felony committed in the city of Lubbock, and you learn, Chief, that this guy lives out in the county. Do you send your SWAT guys out to arrest him?
Well, not automatically, no. And so it's one of the great things that where Kelly and I have such a great relationship, not just between the two of us, but between our agencies and our folks that work together. And so we have really virtually a seamless handoff where we might do that, but more than likely...
But you can do that.
Well, we could, but more than likely in that case, we're going to hand that to the sheriff's office to go out and handle. But if we're going to go out and interview that person or talk with them, we may very well go out there with the sheriff's department and work with them hand in hand. And so
you keep them in the loop.
We do, absolutely. But more than likely, certainly if there's going to be an arrest made, we're going to just hand that off to them. But if there's an interview or something like that, we'll either go out there with them or we'll call them in or something like that. And so... we don't have a lot of territorial issues where we say, and by the same token, if there's something that they're doing that's inside the city, our guys don't get offended if they're doing something in the city. We really try not to draw lines in the sand. We just have a great working relationship. Same thing with the Department of Public Safety, with the state troopers. I got a call not long ago where someone had a concern about state troopers doing traffic enforcement inside the city, And hey, I don't have enough folks to do all the traffic enforcement that needs to be done in the city, and so I welcome that assistance. And Gary Albus, the regional director, he's a good friend of ours, and again, we just have a great relationship all the way around. But yeah, the county and us, we don't worry too much about that. We just want to get the job done with kind of a one-force solution.
Yeah. All I know is that if both the police department and the sheriff's department were at my door, I would get a little worried.
Yeah. Well, it's good that you do have a relationship, because there may come a time where you need to, hey, help.
Sure.
Well, that's just it. And again, Chief hits it right on the head. It is not uncommon today to either walk into the sheriff's office or the PD and see officers from the other agency in there working side by side, case by case. There was a time where we used to talk about, if you think of things like homicide, some of our worst stuff, a lot of times the homicides would occur in the city, but the bodies would be taken out into the county. So, you've got that natural need to cooperate and work together. And there's certain things that are unique to not only the police department, but the sheriff's office. I always kind of talk about, warrants in particular. The county is the depository of all warrants. So it's not uncommon that you'll see our warrants deputies working in the city far more than they're working out in the county. Because again, that's something that the state of Texas, and the way that all works is that when those come down from the courts, they come to us, we enter them into the system, and then we have that ultimate responsibility on a daily basis to go out there and hunt those guys down. So again, it's I think the key to this whole thing is it's so utterly important that we do have that good relationship, and that we're not sitting there worried about whose sandbox are we in and everything else. And again, having watched here lately, you said it yourself, that I'll never forget it. I was so tickled the time I heard that the word on the street, it's the first time I'd had the word on the street, kind of tossed at me. It said, if you see PD and SO rolling together, you better get inside. And that was to the criminal element. And I was like, man, I love it.
If you're the criminal element, of course.
Yeah.
So
you guys are the popo.
That's it. That's it.
So one thing, every now and then you see it. It doesn't happen very often, but you see a sheriff's department doing stopping someone traffic-wise. Is that normally for a warrant, or do they actually do traffic enforcement sometimes?
I don't have quite the personnel to do a lot of traffic enforcement. Our guys will look for safety violations and things of those along those lines. A lot of times, what you're probably seeing out there is our interdiction squads with the canines. They're out there proactively trying to find folks who are trying to distribute narcotics and that type of stuff. So that's their primary way of getting that done, is by way of a traffic stop. But in terms of our regular patrol responsibilities, until we increase in size over the next few years, literal traffic enforcement, speeding, those types of things, we don't have that capacity.
You just hit on a really good point. Lubbock growth is exploding. Of course, Chief, we're going to this new, what do we call it, substations?
Decentralized way of operating.
And it seems to me like that's a good deal.
We have to.
Yeah, but that's because of Lubbock's growth, and the same thing affects you, Sheriff. What do you see? You're talking about we're going to have to add some more officers, and are we not?
Oh, absolutely.
Are we there yet, or do you need officers now?
Well, if there's any commissioners listening right now, the one thing since I've taken office is we've worked in a series of 5-year plans, and so the short answer to your question is yes, we do. Patrol is not in the chute for, say, this year. But over the next couple of years, you're going to see that have to start increasing. We do everything we do, and I think it's probably the same for the chief. Is everything is data driven. So as we see our call volumes go up, as we see call wait times, those types of things are what we pay very close attention to. There was a time when I first took office. It was not uncommon for a citizen to wait 3.5 hours on a low priority call for a sheriff's deputy, and we're completely away from those days. But we do want to watch that time. We don't want to start seeing where our median average is back up to 15, 20 minutes or something like that on low priority stuff. But nonetheless, it's something we watch very closely. But again, you guys hit it on the head. Lubbock is growing. We've got new housing subdivisions going up all over the place, particularly in Southwest.
It's not just growing; it's exploding.
Particularly in Southwest Lubbock. So.
Yeah. Now, can we go ahead and take a break, and then we'll come back and pick this conversation up with the Chief of Police for Lubbock and Sheriff Kelly Rowe for Lubbock County after this. And good morning. We're back at 7:22 here on KFYO Mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin. And we have with us in the studio again Lubbock Police Chief Stevens and Lubbock County Sheriff Kelly Rowe. And the question I wanted to ask, and we talked about this off mic, for me personally, and I think for many citizens, the crime situation and our safety is the number one concern. And during this last election, of course, we interviewed the candidates for Lubbock County Judge, and they both seemed to agree, and were more or less promising to fund the sheriff's department to that degree. Now, you're funded through the city. That's a different deal. So, what do you think? Are you encouraged?
Absolutely. And again, I've had all of the candidates have taken, have taken time to come see our operations. In fact, I just scheduled tail end of last week, scheduled jail tours with all the incoming candidates. Shouldn't sound presumptuous. I know that both of them have opponents for the November election, but for those that have won the primary, we've gotten tours set up so they can see these operations firsthand. A lot of them have already taken the opportunity to go out with our street officers and see what a snapshot, what a picture looks like. Because again, bottom line is Lubbock's growing. You hit on it earlier, and we have been easing our way into becoming a very metropolitan city, but with that comes everything.
Well,
that comes with
the
being
last time you were here, you quoted some crime statistics that are kind of frightening about how much that crime had increased. That's kind of scary, and we see it. I mean, here was a home invasion, I guess last Saturday. Then we had a shooting, yesterday? I mean, it seems like that every day we have a shooting. I know here a few weeks ago we had 2 in one day. That's something you just used to not hear about in Lubbock.
Well, and go ahead.
Well, so I'll say that when I started in the early '90s and coming out of the '80s, we actually had shootings were a lot more prevalent, and then they really subsided quite a bit, and we see that crime, that kind of stuff picking back up. Fortunately, the stats that we've got, our population is still growing at a much greater level than the crime is, but it is very worrisome that crime is growing along with it. You have crime that's growing nationally, and we're not immune to that. It's growing here in Lubbock as well, so something that we're watching, very closely, and at the city level. We've got great support from across the council. I can't say enough how much we appreciate that and how much we enjoy that from every one of the council members and working with the city manager. We're right now in the budget season. I had my big budget meeting yesterday, and so we're everything from training, to manpower to facilities, everything, and again, great support. When we talk about numbers and everything, we were talking about this a little bit over the break. We easily could use another 30, 40 officers on the streets. We have periods where the officers are going call to call to call. But logistically, aside from the idea of how many can we afford and things like that, and knowing all of our manpower comes from tax dollars. But the fact is, I couldn't fill that many positions right now anyway. I mean, we get a certain number of candidates each time around. And if they were to give me, say, 40 new positions, well, I couldn't fill those this year anyway. Can't logistically get that done. But each last year's budget, they added 10 new positions, and we were able to fill those very quickly. We're working on probably adding 10 new positions this year. Again, that's something that we're working on. I feel like that's what we'll do, but the budget's not complete yet. But I can fill 10 new positions for this year. And if we can get that kind of growth each year, we will pretty quickly get to the level of officers that we really need. And that keeps us ahead of growth. And just real quickly, I'll say that with the population difference between last year and this year on the estimated numbers, we would have to add, it's 3.5, but you can't add half officers. So you'd have to add 4 officers to avoid having fewer per capita than you had last year. Okay. So again, if you add 10 to this year's budget, well, then you've got more than twice the number of officers in terms of growth from the department in keeping up with population. So again, if we do that each year, then we're doing a really good job, and that's where I say I really appreciate the support from city management and from the council.
So you were talking about crime being high in the 80s and then kind of dipping down.
That's a national trend. Sure.
And so thinking about national trends, do you think that maybe something that they started back then was the war on drugs, and that's kind of gotten away from that? Do you think that drugs are the main issue that's causing the crimes?
I do. I think if you look at it, this is human nature. We look at anecdotal things, and social media has driven that to a horrendous level. We look at very anecdotal things, and it drives our emotional response. But if you take a very empirical approach to that and look at the real research, the vast majority of all crimes, be they property crime or even violent crime, it all stems back to things such as drugs and even alcohol, for that matter. And so, we talked about home invasions here a little bit ago. Those aren't committed as random acts of violence. In my career, I've never observed a home invasion that was a random act of violence. You and your family sitting back having pizza and movie night at your house, and some strangers break in. That doesn't happen. It's a drug robbery that occurs at a house, and so your property crimes, everything like that.
Okay. All right. Well, we're coming up on the 7:30 break, and good information. We'll be back with more of the Police Chief Stevens from Lubbock and Lubbock County Sheriff Kelly Rowe after this break. And we're back at 7:35. Dave King and Matt Martin on KFYO Radio. In the morning, we're here at your service. And again, with us is the Lubbock Police Chief Stevens and Lubbock County Sheriff Kelly Rowe. We had a caller this morning that wants to know, he says, why is the sheriff an elected position and the police chief is not?
State law. I think it's the best way it is.
It's the Texas Constitution.
Yeah.
How they broke out municipal governments versus you always have to keep in mind county government is an extension of state government by the Texas Constitution. So hence the reason you see all those positions elected. Municipalities, and I'm not an expert here on this, but municipalities were set in so the way those governments were formed, city council, and then the appointment process.
Yeah, there's that I know of in the state of Texas. There's only one city, and it's San Angelo, that has an elected chief of police. The rest of the city, you have an elected mayor and city council, and then some of the very larger cities, the mayor, him or herself, will appoint a police chief who works directly for them. Most of the cities, however, throughout the United States are what you refer to as a city manager form of government, where they appoint a city manager who then basically runs the city. It's kind of the CEO of the city, and the city manager appoints everyone.
All right. I think it probably has something to do with going back to the old days, where the sheriff, he was the law for the whole territory, you know. Yep. But we have a texter this morning that says, to the chief, what about the red light runners here in Lubbock, where 3 and 4 cars run through a red light is the norm? I work a transportation job in town all day, every day, and it's life-threatening just to work here. Please help. I bet you hear that a lot.
I do hear that a lot, and I'm very empathetic to it. So one of the big initiatives that we're doing as we gain manpower, and I can show you the statistics that everybody is very very concerned about violent crime, and rightfully so. We see violent crime rising, but I can show you the statistics that if you're going to be injured or hurt in the city of Lubbock, and really throughout the United States, almost any city, it's going to be in a traffic crash. You have a much higher chance of being injured or killed in a traffic crash than you do being a victim of violent crime, certainly of a random act of violence. And so we're putting a lot of effort into our traffic enforcement, our motorcycle units, and you've seen the Mustang squad that we have out at night. So we're growing our traffic enforcement for this very reason, and we're doing a lot more than just speed enforcement. The traffic enforcement officers, they go out and they look for the whole gamut of traffic enforcement, to include red light runners. So you'll see more of that coming, because I'm empathetic to that. I see it when I'm in my own personal car. And
you don't have a little thing that you can stick on the top of your car?
Not in my personal car,
the
no.
light?
But all of the detective cars have lights and siren on them. And if it's safe to do so, it's not heavy congested traffic, they can also make those stops as well.
Okay, and we have another text messenger that's basically the same question. It's about traffic.
Yeah.
So I think that one answers that.
So if we had an uptick in DWIs in the Lubbock area, I mean, I know that what we're seeing is people running into houses and businesses. Like, they're just going straight through these places.
It's hard to keep it on the road when you've had too much to drink.
Rocks.
So I was just wondering if that's been
big
going
rocks.
Up. Yeah,
that's the key to keeping people from running into your house.
Again, we're going to continue to put resources towards traffic enforcement, because it is one of the things that plagues our city, like a lot of others. And whenever I talk about how I'm going to allocate out our resources, I've had this question before, and it came from, you only have 6 detectives assigned to this type of investigation, this heinous and awful crime, but yet you've got 12 motorcycle officers. And I was able to show, again, if you get out of that anecdotal emotional reaction, and you should look very empirically at real research, you'll see that it's very rare that this awful and horrible, violent crime occurs, and it's tragedy whenever it does. But we have a lot. We have most years more than twice the number of traffic fatalities than we have murders in the city. We have a lot more injury accidents than we have violent crime in the city. And so we've got to allocate resources towards traffic enforcement, because you can prevent these things. And most of your violent crime is hard to prevent because it occurs between people that know each other. They're not random acts of violence. And so, we're going to continue to put resources towards traffic enforcement.
Okay.
So Just to kind of shift gears a little bit, y'all work together with what is now the Citizens Academy. I don't know how long that's been going on. I know that Chad Hasty went through that, and you said y'all are having a graduation tonight for that?
Tonight is the graduation for the 2018A group. This is our fourth one.
I think it's the fourth.
Fourth class. They've been very, very successful. I think the students who have participated in that have garnered quite a bit of knowledge. One of the core goals we had with the Citizens Academy was to educate the public on what's really happening in law enforcement, outside of what they see on TV or what they may be hearing on the news, and some of all the narratives that are out there, most of which, of course, I look at our own Avalanche Journal yesterday. That cartoon was really something. I'm doing my best to mind my tongue with regard to how despicable that was coming from our own newspaper.
And Justin Burrows had some things to say about it.
I read those, and I thanked him personally last night when I talked to him. But again, the main goal was to educate the public on how modern law enforcement is working, particularly here in Lubbock, obviously, and to let them see division by division. You talked earlier, I think when we first started, about jurisdictional lines and how so all of those things can be explained out as to how that actually plays out on a day-to-day basis. But to see where our mission priorities are and how we do what we need to do to confront these issues and again keep this community as safe as we possibly can.
Text messenger this morning says, great interview. I've learned a lot. Thanks to both the sheriff and the chief for their service and working relationship with each other, Chris. 7:42, and we'll take a quick break and come back and close out the last segment. News Talk 95.1 FM, 790 AM. We are KFYO Mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin. And again, Lubbock Police Chief Greg Stevens with us, along with Lubbock County Sheriff Kelly Rowe. Big event last Thursday. There was a major drug bust, correct?
Absolutely.
How many agencies were involved?
There was approximately 6 agencies that were fully vested into it. But by the time it was all said and done, we had SWAT teams between the Sheriff's Office, PD, Police Department, and DPS's SRT came in, hit a dozen locations in the greater Lubbock area. I think you also heard Morton, Brownfield, Levelland kind of area in there. But this was a major thing. They've been working on this operation for some time. It was
DEA.
It was a DEA operation, but we had all been providing a lot of support to that, and that was the day for what we refer to as the big bust out. So by the time it was all said and done, again, 12 locations were hit. 31 people went to jail that day, and we again took another big bite out of the major narcotics trafficking that we've been dealing with around here.
And you picked up a load of drugs, I suppose.
A lot of that's going to be major case stuff down the road that we've been dealing with throughout the course of the investigation. That particular day, they still came into contact with quite a bit of it. It was mostly marijuana and cocaine. We got firearms seized, everything. So it was a good day.
Was there a lot of cash involved too?
Cash is getting harder and harder to get a hold of. There was some involved, but I never did hear any real significant numbers. Unfortunately, we're having to adapt to changes that these organizations are doing with regard to how they get the cash transferred back down to Mexico.
Bitcoin?
No, it's not Bitcoin, but one thing I tell people all the time is, and I show you photographs, is the number of receipts we see. Say Wells Fargo is an example, $9,900.
Yeah,
and you send enough people to do a multitude of $9,900 transactions. Well, guess what that doesn't do? Doesn't trigger that that red alert for the $10,000 mark. And so you've got somebody sitting down in Mazatlan, busily collecting that just as soon as it it hits the ledger.
Yeah. Gangs. What is the gang situation in Lubbock?
About 1,700 of them.
Yeah.
Gang members that are
1,700 gang members.
Representative of about 56 different gangs.
In the city of Lubbock?
Mm-hmm. Is this something that's become a problem in the schools at all?
Oh.
Yeah, I think they deal with it as something they cope with throughout each school year. It's a growing problem along with the school districts as they grow. Certainly as the city continues to grow, you have that element that comes along with it. I think each one of the school districts kind of struggles with it and figuring out ways to cope with it, keep it out of the schools, and as it seeps in, they have to manage it. So they've each got their own police department, and just like we've been talking about today, we work with them hand in hand. We have a great relationship with each one of those school district police departments. It's not just in the 3 that are in Lubbock. The outlying school districts also have that as an issue they have to cope with and keep their schools safe while they also face the issues of active shooter situations that you see around the country. So it's a challenge for school district law enforcement as well, and what superintendents have to put up with.
Okay. Are these gangs connected to the cartels in any way?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that they're the working troops for them, and we had some stories ran a couple of years ago when this really exploded. And we had some old school gang members come forward that would actually cooperate and talk to us, and they talk in terms of, like I said, it's not so much about the old school gang banging like they used to do. It's about them all trying to impress the cartels and ultimately take care of their one mission, which is the distribution of narcotics. So
the money coming back.
And when we see odd things, you always talked about gangs a lot of times, at least initially, along a racial line. That was always kind of the first and foremost, thing you would see, whether you're talking street or jail or prison gangs. Now those lines are so blurred. These guys will come in contact with each other, and in fact, I was looking at a couple pictures, where you had 2 brothers, and one was one gang, one was the other, and it was like, and those 2 gangs historically would war with each other, to the end of the day, and you just don't see it like that anymore.
It used to be about turf war neighborhoods, and now it's more about money and profit.
Yeah. We have a text message this morning that says, I've been driving for 46 years and I can count on one hand how many times I've been stopped. I recently got stopped by a very polite and friendly young officer. I only got a verbal warning. You're doing a great job, and I feel safe in Lubbock, Texas. God bless.
Thank you very much.
I can say that I have count maybe on 2 hands how many times I've been stopped. But it's amazing how many times that I have gotten a warning. I've only got maybe a couple of tickets, but I've gotten a lot of warnings. And I think it has more to do with rolling down my window, putting my hands up on the steering wheel, and being very polite. That would be my suggestion to anyone.
I get asked a lot. What's the best way to get out of a ticket? And it's a strange question, and I always tell people, well, there's no way to get out of a ticket. Your best approach is just be friendly, just be polite. Because I promise you, and of all the police officers that I've hired, of course, across my career and as I've promoted up, they've all been human. I've only hired human beings, and so the officers are doing their job, and they're doing their best to keep the streets safe. And they come up, and if your first reaction is right off the bat, what'd you stop me for? Well, you know why they stopped you. You know how fast you're driving. You ran the red light or whatever it is, and so just politeness, friendliness.
That works for me.
It may not get you out of a ticket. You may very well still get a ticket, but the officer, my expectations of them is for them to be polite. And I recognize that sometimes we don't do our very best job, but we want the officers to be polite, to be friendly, to be very professional. And so it's always going to work out that way if it's a two-way street.
Well, guys, we have the other text messages that, but we're just not going to have time to get to. There's the music. It's been an hour. We could go another hour easily. Thank you so much. I really appreciate both you guys taking the time to come out and be on the radio show with us. I think our audience appreciates you guys a lot. I appreciate you talking straight talk.
It's certainly my pleasure. I always enjoy an opportunity to come and visit.
Thanks for coming. We'll be back with more after this.